There are things you need to erase without saying a word. Parts of yourself you must remove without ceremony, without explanation, without witnesses. Not out of fear, but out of clarity. Some attachments are chains. Some pleasures are poison. Some habits are slow betrayals. Machiavelli, the cold master of human strategy, was never searching for moral purity. He was searching for ruthless effectiveness. He would have cut away, without hesitation, anything that kept him from thinking clearly, acting wisely, and ruling in peace. And he would never have asked for your opinion. Deep down, you already know it too. There are things that must disappear from your life, not with noise or drama, but in silence, like burying a lie you've believed for far too long. What you remove without warning becomes a strength no one can take away from you. So tell me, are you ready to become ruthless with the things that are holding you back? Write in the comments, I'm ready to remove them without warning. Subscribe, like this video, and stay until the end. A revelation is waiting for you. A truth that Machiavelli shared only with those who already knew how to listen in silence. Niccolò Machiavelli was born at a time when Italy was nothing more than a battlefield of political chaos, torn apart by popes, princes, and empires. He grew up surrounded by betrayal, power struggles, and moral illusions. He wasn't an armchair philosopher. He was a secretary of reality, a man who watched the hidden machinery of power, where masks fall away and human nature stands completely exposed. In Times the Prince, he wasn't trying to teach people how they should behave. He simply described, with ruthless honesty, what people actually do when no one is watching. He understood that power has no room for unnecessary burdens, misplaced emotions, self-destructive loyalty, moral excuses, and the comfort of repetitive habits. All of it had to be removed quietly. Over time, that clear-eyed wisdom was twisted, demonized, or watered down. Many tried to paint Machiavelli as a monster or a cynical villain, when in reality he was more like a surgeon operating on the political soul. Today, in a world overflowing with distractions, complacency, and false appearances, rediscovering what Machiavelli would have removed from his own life is an act of freedom. This isn't about cruelty, it's about necessity. The necessity of living without invisible chains, without burdens disguised as loyalty, without illusions preserved simply because they feel comfortable. Far from being a call to evil, Machiavelli's philosophy is an invitation to brutal but deeply liberating inner clarity. If you want to see clearly, you must first remove whatever is clouding your vision. Machiavelli didn't waste his energy fighting visible enemies first. He began by eliminating his own chains. Here are 10 things he would have removed without making a sound. 10 weaknesses he would have erased from his life in the most strategic silence. The first thing Machiavelli would remove from his life immediately is emotional justification. The moment you start explaining your actions through your feelings, you've already surrendered. You're admitting that your life is driven not by vision, but by reaction. Every time you say, "I did that because I felt," you're exposing a vulnerable place that other people will eventually learn how to pull against you. A strategic person does not give public access to their emotions. They feel deeply, but they make their decisions in silence. Machiavelli understood that compassion could be used against a strategist, and that openly expressed vulnerability could become a weapon in the hands of people who listen without love. This isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming unreadable. As long as you feel the need to justify yourself by talking about your pain, your past, your stress, or your emotions, you remain trapped inside an emotional stage. Every decision becomes a courtroom defense. Every action becomes an explanation. Every retreat becomes a plea for understanding. But the prince acts. He weighs the situation. He decides. He adapts. Yet he never apologizes for feeling what he felt. He removes emotional drama from the equation. He frees himself from the need to be understood. Emotional justification is a luxury people cling to when they don't truly want to change. It creates the illusion of authenticity while quietly keeping you powerless. You don't owe anyone an explanation for ending a relationship, walking away, or choosing a different path. Those who truly love you don't need an explanation. And the people who are manipulating you will always demand one. Machiavelli would have cut that cord in silence. And you How many actions have you already abandoned simply because you were afraid you wouldn't be able to explain your feelings the right way? As long as you depend on emotional justification, you'll never truly rule yourself. The second thing Machiavelli would remove without warning is the need for approval. It is the gentlest form of mental slavery. As long as you keep looking over your shoulder to see whether people are following you, you're not leading. You're being held captive. Approval is the modern addiction of the weak. It feeds the ego while quietly destroying the ability to make decisions. Machiavelli knew that leadership sometimes means being hated, often misunderstood, and constantly judged. He never tried to please everyone. He sought respect instead. He understood that the person who tries to please everyone eventually becomes a slave to everyone. The approval you chase on social media, through your silence, through your need for emotional or professional validation, is quietly eating away at your clarity. You stop acting according to your vision. Instead, you act according to the image you want others to have of you. You become an actor in a play you never wrote. A strategist moves forward without looking for applause. He follows an inner compass. He knows that every bold decision attracts criticism, that every courageous move offends mediocre minds, and that real authority always attracts other people's projections. Waiting for approval only delays your growth. The longer you wait for permission, the less you accomplish. The more you need to be understood before taking action, the less willing you'll be to do what truly matters. Removing the need for approval doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you free again. Machiavelli would never have asked the people whether he was allowed to become stronger. He would have simply become stronger. He wouldn't have explained his silence. He would have used it. So ask yourself, who are you still trying to impress? Who is stopping you from doing what you already know you need to do? Simply because you're waiting for someone else's approval? Until you cut that need out of your life, you're not moving forward. You're waiting for permission. The third thing Machiavelli would remove from his life is relationships with no leverage. Connections that exist but serve no purpose. No challenge. No loyalty. No value. Just dead relationships that are still breathing. A strategist doesn't hold on to people because of nostalgia. He measures what every relationship contributes to his mind, his time, and his direction. And if the answer is nothing, he walks away. Most people surround themselves with countless ghost relationships. Childhood friends they no longer have anything in common with. Coworkers they tolerate only because they're afraid of looking cold. Romantic partners who are neither allies nor opponents, just empty figures with no real influence. Machiavelli would remove those relationships not out of cruelty, but because every unnecessary connection drains a piece of your energy. A prince needs leverage. He understands that every person in his inner circle should do at least one of three things: either help him grow, keep him grounded, or challenge him to become stronger. If they do none of those, the relationship becomes an invisible burden, a trap disguised as politeness. In politics, just as in personal life, relationships without leverage weaken your ability to act. They turn vigilance into complacency. A strategist must remain fully aware. Letting go of certain relationships isn't abandonment, it's clarity. You're not obligated to keep people around simply because they've always been there. That doesn't mean you have to disrespect them. It simply means releasing them quietly. And if one day they ask why you've become distant, you won't need to answer, because people who need an explanation for why they've become irrelevant no longer deserve a place in your inner circle. Machiavelli would have cleared his circle of weak and empty presences. And you, who are you still holding on to out of pity? Out of habit? Out of fear of being alone? Remove those relationships the way you would cleanse a palace before letting the light enter. The fourth thing Machiavelli would erase without warning is the need to explain everything. Weak people believe they have to speak in order to reassure others, to justify themselves in order to keep people, to explain themselves in order to matter. But the truth is, the more you explain, the more you reveal. You hand the other person a map of your doubts, a blueprint of your wounds, and the instruction manual to your mind. Machiavelli knew that opacity is power. Silence is not retreat. It is a fortress. The person who talks too much exposes themselves. The person who explains every move is trying to convince others, and the moment you're trying to convince, you're already begging. The need to explain is born from doubt. It is the child of insecurity. The more you need people to understand your reasons, the less you act from a place of true sovereignty. Instead, you act out of fear. Fear of losing someone, disappointing them, or appearing uncertain. But strategy sometimes requires ambiguity. It requires acting without giving an explanation. Machiavelli would never have delivered speeches about his silence. He would have let others speculate, and their speculation would have become a mental battlefield where they exhausted themselves, not him. The person who doesn't explain becomes fascinating. The person who no longer explains becomes dangerous because no one knows what they're thinking, what they're planning, or what they're aiming for. And that creates invisible leverage. When you constantly feel the need to explain yourself, you become transparent, predictable, weak. You give people access to your inner territory when they were never invited inside. Removing this need means reclaiming the power of mystery. It means turning your silence into a strategy and your unpredictability into a strength. So ask yourself, how many times have you emptied yourself just to be understood? How many times have you revealed what should have remained hidden? Machiavelli would have stayed focused on his path. Would you? The fifth thing Machiavelli would quietly remove from his life is blind loyalty. Because loyalty, once it becomes unconscious, turns into slavery. A wise prince remains loyal only until loyalty starts holding him back. He understands that you owe nothing to someone who pulls you away from your mission, even if they once helped you. In the world of power, loyalty is a currency. It is given. It is withdrawn. It is negotiated. Naive people, however, stay attached to dead alliances, one-sided friendships, and moral debts they were taught to carry since childhood. They never know when it's time to walk away. Machiavelli would not have hesitated. He would have ended those ties with grace, but without looking back. He would have erased promises that no longer served a purpose, old agreements that had become heavy burdens, because every form of loyalty must be aligned with your own growth. If it keeps you small, it has become toxic. The worst kind of loyalty is the loyalty you keep giving to people who no longer value you, people who take advantage of your silence, your faithfulness, your lack of strategy. Removing blind loyalty doesn't make you a traitor. It makes you alive again. Machiavelli would have chosen what is useful over what is old, the future over attachment, power over emotional debt. And you? Who are you still loyal to simply because you're afraid of being seen as ungrateful? Who is keeping you from moving forward because you feel bound by a promise the other person has already forgotten? Loyalty is only a virtue when it helps you grow. The sixth thing Machiavelli would remove without warning is commitments made under pressure. Because a commitment has value only when it comes from strategic alignment, not from emotion, fear, or social pressure. A clear-minded person doesn't say yes just to make people happy. They don't commit simply to avoid the discomfort of saying no. They don't make promises they'll later have to break. Every promise made under pressure becomes a ticking time bomb. Machiavelli knew that weak commitments destroy great ambitions. He committed only when he saw a clear opportunity or lasting leverage. Every other commitment he allowed to die quietly, without explanation. How many alliances have you accepted because you felt guilty? How many partnerships, responsibilities, personal relationships, or professional agreements have you accepted just to ease the moment, even though deep down you knew you wouldn't follow through? Those rushed decisions are exactly what later suffocate your freedom to move. A strategist doesn't say yes easily. If necessary, he steps back. He observes. He protects his independence. And if he realizes he made the mistake of saying yes under pressure, he withdraws quickly, without justification, without drama. That isn't dishonor. It's a course correction. Because true honor means staying faithful to your vision, even if that requires walking away from commitments you made in confusion. Machiavelli would have broken an agreement the moment it became an obstacle. He would never have clung to a promise made out of fear. And you? What are you still carrying simply because you said yes too soon, too quickly, or from a place of weakness? Removing those poorly rooted commitments means freeing yourself from promises that are slowly poisoning your life. It means learning to say no without feeling the need to explain yourself. It means taking back control of your schedule, your energy, and your rise. The seventh thing Machiavelli would quietly remove is dependence on comforting routines. Those repeated actions that create the illusion of security while slowly putting your mind to sleep. Machiavelli never confused stability with stagnation. He understood that the person who repeats the same actions every day eventually stops thinking. Nothing is more dangerous than a habit that no longer serves you, but survives simply because it's comfortable. Routines can either become rituals of effectiveness or invisible prisons. You think you're becoming organized, but you're actually building walls around yourself. You think you're becoming disciplined, but you're denying yourself surprise, adaptation, and strategic flexibility. A prince needs mental agility. He needs adaptability. He doesn't become attached to one particular method. He stays committed to the goal. If the path has to change, he changes it. He doesn't defend a routine. He defends his power. Machiavelli would have examined his habits like a spy. He would have kept the ones that made him stronger and eliminated the ones that numbed his mind. And he would have done it quietly, without announcing, "I'm going to change." He simply would have changed. And you, how many things do you do every day simply because they make you feel safe? How many actions, thoughts, reactions, or words do you repeat without ever asking whether they're actually moving you closer to your goal? Removing those sterile routines reconnects you with the living tension of progress. It breaks the warm bed where your inner authority has fallen asleep. It awakens the eye that observes, the mind that adapts, and the hand that acts decisively. The eighth thing Machiavelli would remove without ever talking about it is performative outrage. That moral posture that creates the illusion of superiority while hiding an inability to take action. When outrage becomes a performance, it becomes a refuge for people who refuse to face reality. It allows them to shout without changing anything, to judge without building anything, to point fingers at others instead of looking at themselves. Machiavelli knew that loud voices never change the rules of the game. He understood that the noisiest moralists are often frightened performers, too weak to face the world as it truly is. A strategist does not become outraged. He analyzes. He doesn't waste time crying over injustice. He asks how to protect himself from it. Performative outrage is a stage performance of virtue. It feeds the ego, but produces nothing. Even worse, it weakens you. It tricks you into believing you're taking action when you're really just exhausting yourself in noise. Removing this habit means letting go of the need to appear good. It means choosing clarity over popularity. It means looking at the world without moral filters, so you can understand it better, move through it more wisely, and outsmart it more effectively. Machiavelli would never have wasted his time loudly condemning people who betray, manipulate, or dominate others. He would have observed them, learned from them, and moved forward without cheering and without booing. And you, how many times have you raised your voice to condemn something you secretly refuse to confront within yourself? Removing performative outrage doesn't make you insensitive. It makes you effective. It moves you from commentary to conquest. It replaces emotional reactions with strategic calculation. The ninth thing Machiavelli would erase without ceremony is meaningless chatter. The endless stream of daily talk that drains the mind, scatters your focus, and wastes your energy on things that don't matter. Every word spoken without purpose is a loss of power. Machiavelli never spoke just to fill silence. He spoke to guide, to influence, to command, or to test everything else. He kept to himself. For him, silence was a place to recharge, a territory where decisions were made. The person who talks all the time eventually has nothing left to say. And the person who shares everything without restraint becomes an open book for those who want to manipulate them. Removing meaningless chatter doesn't make you distant. It makes you precise. It's about choosing your words, the way a chess master places pieces on the board, making every sentence an action. Modern culture pushes us to comment on everything, react to everything, put every feeling into words. But that constant stream of noise drowns what truly matters. It kills deep thinking. It replaces reflection with reaction. Machiavelli would have walked away from empty conversations. He would have let everyone else talk, explain themselves, lose themselves in endless words. He would have observed, calculated, acted. And you, how many times have you betrayed yourself with one word too many? How many times have you handed someone the blueprint of your thinking when you thought you were simply having a conversation? Removing meaningless chatter means choosing silence as a strategy. It means turning your words into a weapon, not entertainment. It means breaking free from the mediocrity of constant communication. The 10th thing Machiavelli would remove with absolute calm is the fear of being alone, because that fear is the root of almost every compromise. The person who fears loneliness accepts toxic relationships, weak compromises, and empty groups. They would rather be in bad company than be alone. Machiavelli understood that power requires inner solitude, that a prince must sometimes isolate himself, to think, to adjust, to be reborn. Solitude is not punishment. It is a test of truth. It reveals who you are without decorations, without mirrors, without applause. It forces you to face what you've been hiding beneath the noise of other people. Removing the fear of being alone gives you the luxury of true sovereignty. It allows you to step away without falling apart, to think without needing validation, to feel without needing distraction. Vision is born in solitude, and it was in solitude that Machiavelli would have prepared his greatest moves. He never ran from silence. He fed on it. And you, how many decisions have you avoided simply because they would have left you alone? How many relationships have you kept alive only because you feared the emptiness that would follow? Removing that fear opens the door to a strength no one else can give you, your own inner weight. It transforms you into a continent. Instead of an island dependent on everyone around you, whenever you remove something from your life, you are not creating emptiness. You are creating space for power. What Machiavelli understood is that the act of removing something creates invisible consequences, deep movements that only silence can set into motion. Now let's uncover what strategic elimination reveals when you finally let go of everything that has been quietly pulling you down. The first unsettling truth Machiavelli would have discovered by removing certain things from his life is this: disappearance creates mystery, and mystery creates power. The person who quietly steps away becomes a mystery, and mystery attracts far more attention than noise ever will. In a world where everyone constantly exposes themselves, explains themselves, and demands to be seen, the person who disappears does not become insignificant. They become unforgettable. Mystery is magnetic. It unsettles people. It fascinates them. It forces others to interpret what you never said. Machiavelli understood that constant visibility weakens authority. A prince appears only when action is necessary. He doesn't respond to everything. He isn't everywhere. He never explains his absence. And it is precisely that silence that creates uneasiness in his enemies and respect in those who watch him. Removing the unnecessary increases your presence. When you reduce how often you appear, every word, every action, every appearance carries greater weight. Your value is not created by constant visibility. It is created by intentional rarity. The person who is visible all the time eventually becomes empty, but the one who knows how to step away, who knows how to remove everything that no longer serves them, turns themselves into sacred ground. And this mystery is not a performance. It is a way of being. The clearer you become to yourself, the harder you become for others to read, and the harder you are to read, the more they respect you, the more they wonder about you, the more they ask themselves what you're really preparing. Machiavelli never wanted to be loved. He wanted to be respected. And to earn that respect, he knew he had to disappear from certain stages, cut certain ties, and erase certain presences from his life. And you, what would your strategic disappearance reveal? How could your absence become more powerful than your words? As long as you're visible everywhere, you dilute your impact. To remove is to become impossible to grasp. The second uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have discovered is this: the emptiness left by your absence reveals how little many things actually mattered. Sometimes all it takes is stepping away from a group, a relationship, or a circle to realize you were holding on more out of habit than out of necessity. Absence shines a harsh light. It reveals what truly had value and what survived only because of psychological attachment. Machiavelli understood that people surround themselves with unnecessary things to feel secure. They keep contacts that no longer matter, responsibilities that only weigh them down, rituals that make them feel comfortable. But the moment they remove them, they discover they haven't really lost anything. Instead, they've gained space. Emptiness becomes purification, and what hurts isn't the emptiness itself. It's the fear of emptiness. A strategist isn't afraid of blank space. He knows that emptiness allows him to refocus. He sees every withdrawal as an opportunity to reorganize his inner territory. Whatever you remove becomes a test. Do you truly miss that person? Do you truly miss that activity? Or are you discovering that you are living inside an emotional dependency that never had a real foundation? Removing isn't just about decluttering. It's about awakening your awareness to what truly matters. And very often, you realize you were carrying burdens that no one ever asked you to carry. You had become a willing prisoner inside a social performance that gave you nothing in return. Machiavelli would have seen every empty space as a new fortress. He would have understood that whatever collapses in your absence was never truly solid to begin with. And you, what are you afraid of losing? Who no longer adds anything to your life? What is still standing only because you keep feeding it? To remove something is to test its true value. The third uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have understood is this: the mind becomes sharper once it is no longer chained to emotion. As long as you stay attached to every feeling, every emotional wave, every painful memory, your judgment becomes cloudy. You react, you sympathize, you explain, but you no longer decide from your center. Machiavelli knew that emotion is a fog. It softens what needs to be cut away. It delays what needs to be done, and it tricks you into believing that feeling something is the same as understanding it. But understanding is not feeling. Understanding is discernment, and discernment requires cutting certain emotional ties, removing emotional justifications, inner dramas, and attachments to your self-image. Purifies your mind. It restores a clarity that many people have lost in the chaos of their emotions. A strategist is not heartless. He simply knows the difference between what comes from the heart and what comes from fear. He knows that genuine love never chains you down. Wounded attachment does. He knows that pure anger can sometimes be useful, but lasting resentment is a mental prison. He knows that sadness is a warning signal, but it must never become a place to live. Removing emotional patterns you've been feeding, emotional justifications, and fantasies of recognition turns your mind into a blade, sharper, colder, fairer. You are not here to keep mourning the past. You are here to build from the present. And if your mind is constantly replaying old memories, doubting itself, or searching to be comforted, it isn't available for discernment. Machiavelli would have treated emotion like a messenger, not a master. He would have listened to it, then dismissed it. And you, what are you still allowing to rule your life in the name of authenticity? Which unresolved emotion is still clouding your judgment? To remove is to set free the weapon of discernment. The fourth uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have declared without hesitation is this: strategic silence forces other people to reveal themselves. The person who talks constantly empties themselves. The person who stays silent long enough becomes a question, and everyone wants to answer that question. They become restless. They speculate. They project. And in doing so, they reveal what they truly think about you. Machiavelli understood that hidden inside silence is a mirror. That's where the masks fall away. Because the moment you remove your words, your presence, or your support, you force people out of their comfort zone. You remove the stage. And whatever was hiding behind it begins to reveal itself. What people say about you when you're no longer around. What they do when you stop responding. Who they become when you stop supporting them. That's the truth that was hidden beneath the surface of every interaction. Silence is not withdrawal. It is a method, a technique for discovering the truth without making a sound. Removing automatic speech means learning to listen differently. It means seeing beyond words. It means understanding what people were trying so hard to hide. Machiavelli never rushed to fill silence. He planted silence like a seed, then watched what grew in the shadows. And you. What do the silences you create reveal? What truth would appear if you simply stopped talking, stopped reassuring everyone, stopped always being available? Removing your voice doesn't mean disappearing. It means letting the world speak for you. And very often, the brightest truth appears inside that silence. The fifth uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have discovered is this: to remove is to reclaim your mental territory. You may believe you're thinking freely, but as long as your mind is occupied by people you no longer see, promises you never canceled, expectations you never broke, your mind is still occupied. There are parts of you that have been taken over, automatic thoughts, silent regrets, old voices that are still making your decisions for you. Removing doesn't mean forgetting. It means declaring that your mind belongs to you again. It means drawing a line between what you choose to nourish and what you refuse to tolerate. Machiavelli understood that power begins with inner sovereignty. As long as someone else occupies your mind, you rule nothing. Every memory you keep feeding, every unconscious loyalty, every mental habit you've never questioned is an occupation. A wise prince reclaims every inch of himself. He allows no part of his mind to be ruled by ghosts. Removing is a silent exorcism. It clears out everything that has been occupying your memory, your imagination, and your view of the world. Only after that cleansing can you think with clarity, feel with accuracy, and act with strength. And you. What is still living inside you without your permission? Which image? Which person? Which words? Which memory still haunts your inner territory? Removing isn't denial. It's reclaiming what belongs to you. It's becoming the only king of your own mind. The sixth uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have stated calmly is this: the world respects only those who give themselves permission to cut things off without warning. In nature, what survives isn't what constantly cries out in pain. It's what adapts. Or what cuts away what no longer serves it. The world has no sympathy for the person who asks permission before walking away. The person who waits for approval before ending a toxic relationship. Who rehearses long speeches to justify leaving. Who keeps the door open out of politeness. Eventually becomes prey. Machiavelli knew this. Quiet decisiveness earns far more respect than 1,000 explanations. Whatever you refuse to cut off because you still want to be loved will slowly destroy you. Respect doesn't come from being nice. It comes from being clear. When you say no without anger, when you walk away without hatred, when you disappear without making a scene, you project a quiet authority and a sense of mystery that people feel, even if they can't explain it. That is the kind of inner authority that commands without raising its voice. Machiavelli never asked permission to leave. He simply acted. And it was precisely because he never explained himself that people respected and feared his decisions. Respect is not created by brutality. It is created by clarity. Removing something without warning sends one unmistakable message. Your inner direction matters more than other people's comfort. And it is that sovereignty that forces the world to see you differently. The person who walks away without drama shows they no longer need to be understood. Ironically, it is that freedom from emotional dependence that creates fascination. And you, how many times have you stopped yourself from walking away simply because you didn't want people to think badly of you? How many times have you watered down your own power just to avoid making someone uncomfortable? Removing something without warning is telling the world, I don't need your validation to exist. And in the end, that silent message is always respected. The seventh uncomfortable truth Machiavelli would have whispered to those who still doubt is this: the less you justify yourself, the more your presence weighs on people's minds. The person who is constantly defending themselves becomes weightless. They drift through life like a dry leaf, easy to criticize, easy to question, easy to dismiss. But the person who stays centered without feeling the need to explain everything eventually imposes their own reality. Machiavelli understood that silence carries a weight words can never match. The more you justify yourself, the more opportunities you give others to diminish you. Every explanation becomes an invitation to debate. Every defense creates room for doubt. But when you refuse to play that game, when you keep the door closed, when you let everyone else talk while you keep moving, you become impossible to ignore. Present, even in your absence. The person who no longer feels the need to explain becomes an idea, and ideas make people uneasy. Machiavelli never spoke to be loved. He spoke to rule. And sometimes he didn't speak at all, because he knew that some people are most powerful when they refuse to defend themselves. The human mind hates a vacuum, and silence creates one. It forces people to fill your absence with assumptions, fears, and projections. Those imagined stories keep them thinking about you, without you having to do anything at all. Removing the need to justify yourself sets free an authority that no longer depends on anyone's opinion. It builds a stability within you that unsettles people, and even if they can't explain it, they can feel it. And you, what are you still defending? Which image? Which decision? Which version of yourself are you still explaining just to be accepted? Sometimes, removing something simply means remaining silent with dignity. It means letting your presence carry the message for you. It means understanding that true authority never raises its voice. It is felt, like an invisible pressure on the human soul. But understanding isn't enough. Removing requires a steady hand, a clear method, and inner discipline. Machiavelli would never have left something this important to chance. He would have turned it into a system. Here are 7 practical techniques you can start using today to clear your mental space, regain control of your direction, and embody the cold clarity the world doesn't know how to disarm. The first technique for removing things in silence is the method of leaving without a trace. Machiavelli would never have announced his departure. He simply would have stopped being there. No speeches, no explanations, no final words. Leaving without a trace is a mental discipline. It is the art of walking away without leaving signposts for those who want to hold you back, judge you, or follow you. This technique is simple. Don't explain why you're leaving. You stop texting. You stop replying. You stop feeding the connection. And you don't talk about it. You don't block them. You don't make a dramatic exit. You simply fade away, because every reaction, even a defensive one, is still a form of attachment. Leaving without a trace requires resisting the temptation to close the story. You don't give the other person the luxury of having the last word, or even the first one. You don't announce your departure. You simply leave. That silence, that emptiness, that unexplained absence becomes a powerful mystery. People begin asking themselves, where did you go? Why did you leave? What are you thinking? But by then, you're already somewhere else. And the cleaner your departure, without emotional outbursts, without explanations, the better you protect yourself. Because the person who announces they're leaving invites conflict. The person who truly disappears leaves no opening for traps. Machiavelli would have practiced this technique with surgical precision. And you? How many times have you made leaving harder by saying too much? How many times have you left breadcrumbs because you secretly wanted to be found? Leaving without a trace means rejecting nostalgia, Rejecting drama, choosing emptiness. It isn't running away. It's moving inward. It's giving yourself permission to strategically forget so you can be reborn somewhere else. Stronger, higher, wiser. Remove without leaving a trace. And let silence speak for you. The second technique you must practice to eliminate what weakens you is the radical filtering of mental influences. Every day, your mind absorbs messages, words, images, voices, emotions. And without realizing it, you allow those influences to shape your perception, weaken your clarity, and slow your determination. Machiavelli would never have allowed his mind to be colonized by popular opinion. He would have selected, filtered, purified. The radical filtering of mental influences is the art of identifying what enters your mind and cutting it off before it takes root. It begins with an honest review of what you consume. Which channels do you watch? Whose voice do you listen to? What ideas are you allowing to live inside your mind? And, most importantly, do those influences strengthen your sovereignty or distract you from becoming who you truly are? Influence is rarely loud. It is subtle. It hides inside casual conversations, repeated jokes, shared emotions. A strategist feeds only on what makes him stronger. He has no tolerance for ambiguity. He cuts it away. You must do the same. Reduce access to your mind. Unfollow weak voices. Walk away from people who constantly complain. Remove the thoughts that keep repeating inside your head but never help you grow. You are not a sponge. You are a filter. You are not a container. You are a forge. Everything that enters your mind must pass one simple test. Does this make me clearer, calmer, stronger? If the answer is no, then it is an invasion. Machiavelli would never have allowed other people's voices to take possession of his mind. He would have protected his mental territory like a fortress. And you, what have you allowed inside because you were tired, too kind, or simply distracted? Radical filtering is the beginning of reclaiming yourself. Remove it. Close the gates. Choose carefully what you allow to shape your mind. The third technique you must apply to become the master of your words again is the strategy of targeted silence. Machiavelli never spoke simply to fill empty space. He spoke to create an effect. And when he chose silence, it was to create an even greater one. Targeted silence is not isolation. It is a weapon, a tactic used to unsettle, to test, or to create absence. This technique is simple. Identify the situations where silence will have more impact than an answer. Deliberately choose not to reply, not to explain, not to react. Not because you're weak, but because you're in control. It is inside that silence that people reveal their true intentions. It is inside your silence that others begin projecting their own fears, their desires, their manipulations. Targeted silence creates space, and that space becomes a mirror. You can use it during conflict, in negotiations, or inside uncertain relationships. You're not pretending to disappear. You're becoming a mirror. And this silence is not passive. It is intentional. You keep the information to yourself. You hold back your response. You control the impact. And you observe. Silence exposes the dangerous talkers, the nervous liars, and the anxious people who need to control everything. This silence is not an absence. It is concentrated presence. Machiavelli would have remained silent while everyone else kept talking. He would have waited for the exact moment when his words could shake the entire room. And you, when do you choose silence? Are you still a prisoner of the need to answer immediately? Or have you learned how to let silence do the work? Targeted silence allows you to reclaim the power of your words. It turns every sentence you eventually speak into an event. Removing the impulse to respond is the beginning of mastering your communication. And it all starts with the strategic decision not to fill every silence, The fourth technique you must master if you truly want to become free is breaking invisible emotional debts. You can't see them, but they weigh you down. These are the silent agreements you've made with people who once helped you, loved you, or supported you at some point in your life. And ever since then, you've felt obligated. You feel like you can't say no. You feel like you can't walk away. You carry a silent loyalty, a fear of betraying them, a quiet guilt whenever you try to move forward on your own. Machiavelli would never have tolerated an emotional debt that had never been renegotiated. He understood that every emotional loyalty must be reevaluated because relationships change, balance shifts, and what was healthy yesterday can become toxic today. Breaking invisible emotional debts means having the courage to say, "What you did for me mattered, but it doesn't mean I have to sacrifice myself to keep you in my life." This technique requires cutting the connection inside yourself. Even if you continue to honor that person outwardly, you change the energy of the relationship. You no longer feel guilty for growing, for saying no, for walking away. Even if they once helped you, you owe nothing to anyone who uses your past to control your future. A prince never allows gratitude to become chains. He says thank you. Then he moves forward. Machiavelli would have looked at emotional debts as knots that needed to be cut. And you? Who are you afraid to leave simply because they once reached out and helped you? Who has convinced you that you must stay because they rescued you years ago? Removing this burden means honoring someone without sentencing yourself. It means freeing the strength of your present without remaining trapped by yesterday's rescue. It means walking away with grace, without drama, but with authority. The fifth technique you must establish if you no longer want to be overwhelmed is the weekly audit of your inner circle. Machiavelli never allowed his alliances to become permanent. He examined them, adjusted them, tested them. A prince does not stay loyal to a circle simply because of habit. He constantly evaluates it. This technique is simple. Once a week, sit down, alone. Mentally review every person who is currently active in your life. Not to judge them, but to see them clearly. What kind of energy does this person bring into your life? How do you honestly feel after spending time with them? Does this relationship strengthen you or quietly drain you? Take notes, observe, feel, and most importantly, be willing to admit the truth. Some people no longer belong in your life. They weigh you down, distract you, confuse you, but you refuse to see it because you're afraid of appearing harsh, cold, or ungrateful. Machiavelli knew that a weak circle creates weak leadership. He understood that every person around you is an influence, a lever, a magnetic force. The weekly audit of your circle is the conscious practice of examining what you allow around you. It is regular maintenance, strategic vigilance. This doesn't mean cutting everyone off overnight. It means seeing clearly, naming the truth, and gradually making adjustments. Move closer to the people who help you become centered. Step away from those who slowly pull you off course. Remove people quietly, without anger, without conflict, but with discipline. And you, how many people are still in your life simply because they've been there for a long time? Self-respect begins with controlling your human environment. You are responsible for who surrounds you. You are the guardian of your own circle. The sixth technique you must practice to purify your inner world is the Journal of Inner Purification. This isn't just another notebook. It's a weapon, a private chamber where every day or every week you write down everything you still haven't had the courage to remove. Everything you're still carrying because of fear, confusion, or inertia. Machiavelli would have used this space to clarify his blind spots, not to feel sorry for himself, but to create a map. Write down what you don't dare say out loud. Write down what you feel, but refuse to face. Name the uncertain relationships, the hidden dependencies, the unhealthy loyalties, the desires that pull you away from your sovereignty. The Journal of Inner Purification is a place with no audience, no censorship, no need to be nice. Here, you are completely honest, raw, strategic, and by writing this way, patterns begin to emerge. Truths your mind had buried beneath endless justifications suddenly become visible. You'll clearly see who you still haven't walked away from, what you still haven't had the courage to let go of, what you're still tolerating, simply because you're afraid of hurting someone. This journal becomes a map of the power you must reclaim, and what you consistently write down eventually becomes action. Machiavelli would have used writing as preparation for action, not as therapy. He would have made a list of everything that needed to disappear, then acted, without hesitation. And you, what are you still carrying in your mind that you've never dared to name? What shadow is still living inside you because you've never identified it? This journal is your battlefield mirror. It doesn't comfort you. It reveals you. It doesn't flatter you. It strengthens you. Removing begins with writing, because whatever you've never dared to put into words still has power over you. And whatever you write down clearly becomes a target you can finally eliminate. The seventh technique you must turn into a ritual to anchor your clarity is the ritual of strategic erasure. Although Machiavelli was a political thinker, he understood the power of symbolic actions. Power isn't expressed only through mental decisions. It is also expressed through concrete rituals that embody change. The ritual of strategic erasure is a private practice, quiet, yet deeply transformative. It means giving physical form to the act of letting go. Destroying a letter, deleting someone's name from an old notebook, burning an object tied to a toxic memory, walking alone in a meaningful place while making a silent decision within yourself. This isn't magic. It's embodied sovereignty. You're sending a message to your subconscious that this decision isn't merely an idea. It's physical. It's real. It's finished. A ritual makes irreversible what your mind might later try to question. It locks in your decision. It gives weight to your choice. Too often we decide to let something go, only to allow the old energy back into our lives because we never truly sealed the decision. A ritual closes that door. You can repeat it every month, every season, or every year. As an act of strategic purification, Machiavelli understood that the human mind needs symbols to remain committed. Without a visible act, change often remains abstract. And you? What could you erase today through one clear, visible, private, yet powerful action? What chain could you finally break by giving your decision physical form? This ritual is for you alone. No one else needs to see it. It simply needs to be real. Removing isn't just deciding. It's transforming. It's allowing your clarity to flow into your actions. And when you step into this ritual of erasure, you become the ruler of your inner kingdom once again. You become the one who cuts away, the one who closes the chapter, the one who keeps walking forward. Everything you've heard today isn't an abstract philosophy. It's an invitation to dismantle what no longer belongs in your life. You don't need to keep adding more advice, more rituals, more books. You need to subtract. You need to become clearer, lighter, sharper. And this is where Machiavelli returns, not as a cold, cynical guide, but as someone who shines a light on reality. He never told you to become cruel. He told you to become clear. He taught you to see what most people refuse to name, that love can become a debt, that words can become an escape, that loyalty can become a prison. Whatever you keep out of habit eventually begins to keep you. Whatever you remain attached to without awareness eventually begins to rule your life. Sometimes you have to disappear to truly exist again. Sometimes you have to cut ties without making noise. Walk away without hatred. Leave without warning. It is through those invisible actions that you reclaim your power. Whatever you erase without making a spectacle becomes a quiet source of strength. Whatever you remove without drama becomes space for a new beginning. A strategist isn't the one who crushes everyone else. A strategist is the one who knows when to step back, who removes what no longer serves them without hesitation, who quietly reorganizes their inner world without turning it into a performance. And you, are you ready to eliminate what is holding you back? Not tomorrow, not when life becomes easier, Now, which voice will you stop listening to? Which relationship will you remove from your path? Which habit will you let die before it slowly destroys you? You don't need to announce it. You don't need anyone to understand. You simply need to act. Because real power, the kind that lasts, the kind that earns respect, the kind that transforms you, begins with one silent decision that no one sees coming, and no one can stop. The world is watching. It wants to know whether you're still a slave to the things slowing you down, or whether you're finally ready to rule your own inner kingdom. If this message spoke to you, write, "I choose clarity" in the comments. And if you're ready to master the hidden psychology of power, strategy, and self-mastery, subscribe to Hidden Oasis. Remember, the greatest victories are often the ones no one ever sees. Stop seeking other people's approval. Remove, erase, purify, then begin again. Because what you remove today will become tomorrow's lighter burden, your restored clarity, and your multiplied impact. And when the world asks why you've changed, you won't have to say a single word. You'll simply smile, because those who truly know don't talk endlessly, and those who talk endlessly rarely know. If you want to walk among powerful minds, you must learn to cut away what no longer serves you quietly. And if you've stayed with Hidden Oasis until this very moment, it wasn't by accident. Deep down, you already know what you need to do. Now, do it in silence, and watch the world around you begin to change.